Hello and welcome to today's webinar, AI from the Front Lines. This is the second event in the Accelerate AI webinar series brought to you by Hewlett Packard Enterprise and Intel. Today's event is produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this event. On this event, we encourage you to ask questions using the questions box in your audience console. We have experts from HPE and Intel standing by to answer all of your questions. We also have a number of handouts available for download in the Handouts tab. I encourage you to download those now and check them out after the event. Finally, at the end of this event, we'll be giving out an Amazon $300 gift card to one lucky attendee on this live event. If you're watching this on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. Prize terms and conditions can be found at events.actualtechmedia.com. Now, before I introduce you to today's expert presenters, I want to first remind you about what you learned in the previous event in this series. In the first event, which I've placed a link to there in the Handouts tab, you learned about how many companies out there are pushing forward with the adoption of AI solutions. In fact, roughly 50% of the companies out there said they are early in the adoption phase, 30% said they've already started with AI adoption, and 20% said that they are in advanced adoption of artificial intelligence solutions. The key takeaways from that first event were that AI will permeate across all industries, and you are encouraged to start early and lean in. Also, you should focus on small projects first. Don't do AI for the sake of AI. And finally, you're encouraged to begin your journey with the right technology partner. And now I'm excited to introduce today's presenters. They are Mr. Manoj Suvarna, business leader for HPC and AI at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Romain Laurelute, vice president of R&D at Criteo Labs. And Monica Livingston, AI sales director for Americas and EMEA at Intel. Thank you all for joining us on today's panel discussion.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And our first presenter is Manoj. Manoj, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks, David. Appreciate it. So welcome, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join our webcast today. We understand that, these are some unprecedented times. The last few weeks have been challenging for everyone, both personally as well as professionally. And clearly, we're all in uncharted territory. However, at HPE, we believe in what we call as the force of good. So there are a few things that we are doing, to help our customers alleviate some of the challenges. So let me start with a few that are listed here, starting with number one. So HPE believes in what we call as charitable giving. And, for the last couple of weeks, all of our employees have poured in innumerable amount of dollars in order to support the charities that are helping our customers on the front lines, as well as some of the first responders. Now, in addition to that, what we have done is we have also offered opportunities for some of our networking engineers and setting up those front lines. When it comes to remote working, where people are not used to doing things remotely, and so clearly, there's voluntary efforts that's going into that area. Another thing to note of is the fact that you may be aware that HPE today is the market leader in high performance computing, as a result of which we have large footprints of technologies that are available to researchers globally. And so we have now extended an opportunity to connect with the White House as well as the Department of Energy in order to pool all these resources along with other technology vendors in order to make sure that researchers have the latest technology to go help find a cure for COVID-19. The third area is around data science and AI, right? This is where our data scientists are working with some of the lead data scientists around the world in order to pour through thousands of research papers and looking for machine learning algorithms in order to come up with compounds and protein structures that can help drive a cure towards AI. Last but not the least, just as of last week, HPE Financial Services has introduced a $2 billion fund in order to help support our customers with financing as well as leasing or even technology buybacks. This is we feel this is an opportunity for us to extend our reach to our customers and help them with the challenges and capital outflows that they might be facing today.
Excellent. Thank you, Manoj. That's great to hear everything that you're doing there at HPE. And now, Monica, I wanted to hear what's happening at Intel.
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to HPE, we are always looking for ways we can apply our technology and expertise to address this challenge. So we are investing experts, we're investing ideas, resources, dollars, and essentially our aim is to advance care for the most vulnerable, protect the healthcare service providers on the front lines, and then accelerate the rate to find an acceptable and effective cure and a vaccine. So we have invested in expediting scientific research. We've invested dollars as well as hardware resources. We have provided personal protective gear. You might be aware that the Intel clean rooms have some of the more efficient protective gear out there. So we've donated large amounts of bunny suits. And then we are also working to ensure access to online learning for students. We also have a fund of dollars that we are spending with our customers as well as our partners, again, to effectively find a cure and then protect those that are most vulnerable.
Excellent. That's fantastic news to hear everything that you're doing at Intel and at HP as well. So many good community efforts going on to help the world really when it comes to pandemic response. And now I'm excited to hand it over to today's expert presenter, Romain.
Yeah, thank you, David. So before starting to explain what Criteo does around AI and the importance it has for our business, I would like to set the stage a little bit and talk about the advertising market. Overall, worldwide, it's a $500 billion business. And the only part that is actually growing, now, I'm not sure what's going to happen in 2020, but at least until 2019, it was growing tremendously. And overtaking the TV investments in marketing about 6 months ago, something like this. Criteo is a player in that arena of online performance advertising. Our objective is to show personalized banners to internet browsers by selecting the products that are most relevant to their areas of interest so that they will click on the banner, purchase something, bringing value to our clients, the retailers, but also to the publishers where the users consume content, and which is the place where we purchase our ad spaces. Overall, it's an ecosystem in which there are three major parties that we try to bring together. The end user, the 2 billion internet users that we are able to address, the retailers and advertisers that want to show products relevant to those users and have them perform purchases, and the publishers, the one that have content that they want to monetize to their audience. Ideally, and thanks to AI, which I'm going to explain a little bit further on, we are able to align the incentives and to benefit this whole ecosystem. To give you rough ideas in a few numbers, Criteo is, well, it's 15 years old actually this year. It was founded in 2005. It's been listed on the NASDAQ, went public in 2013. There's about 2,700 employees, 20,000 clients, $2 billion yearly revenue, about 2 billion internet users all over the world. And our aggregate clients, so all the retailers and advertisers and brands that we work with, see every year an amount of transaction of about $800 billion. And to talk a little bit about the technology part, we have around 4 to 6 million display opportunities every second that we need to select in order to decide whether we want to show something to somebody, whether we have something relevant for that person. So we have a global presence. We were started in France 15 years ago, and we very quickly went global, addressing our neighboring European countries, but also the US in 2009, I believe. And now we're split 40% in Europe, 40% in the Americas, mostly the US, and 20% in the Asia Pacific region.
It's fascinating what you're doing there at Criteo. So next question I want to ask you here is, how does AI power online marketing?
So before we go into that specific application of AI, I just wanted to remind everybody what were the three pillars of AI and how they intermingle together. The most important part is data. So you've all heard data is the new oil, data is the new gold, which maybe right now is a much more valuable commodity than oil. This is the most important part, is the fuel of any artificial intelligence or machine learning system. The second one is the objective, what you want your AI to achieve and how it relates to your business objective. And the third is the model, the algorithm, how your AI is programmed in order to reach the objective given the data that it's working with. To go a little bit into details, most of the artificial intelligence systems that we consider use what we call supervised learning, meaning we have a piece of data. It can be, for example, an image with the pixels. It can be what we have are a user's shopping history, what they purchased on the various retailers. Those are the data. And we have a target, which is the objective that I mentioned earlier. So in the case of an image, it can be either saying that this is a picture of a cat or a dog or a hot dog or your Uncle Joe. This is the target that you want the model to predict given the data that it has access to. So based on what we call a training set, in which we have both the data and the target, this is the part that is supervised because we humans provide the target. Given the data and the target, we learn how to extract information, patterns, how to understand the data in order to predict the target. Once we have a model that's been trained on a training set, we can apply it to a new pieces of data that do not have this label, and this is the prediction part. Now, you've trained your AI to recognize pictures of cats versus dogs, and now you can use it on any new kind of picture, and it will tell you whether it's a cat or a dog or your Uncle Joe. In our situation, we are using the browsing history, shopping history, contextual information of users to predict whether they are relevant for a certain advertising campaign. And those are the ways we use our systems. So supervised learning, you have your data, you provide the labels, and you learn how the data causes the targets. And then with the new unlabeled data, you are able to predict with as good accuracy as possible the new target that are interesting for your business. So based on this, how do you build an AI advertising engine? The first part is to decide whether actually you should show an ad or not, and at which price are you willing to buy. Modern advertising systems use real-time auctions so that everybody has to bid a certain amount of money in order to purchase one display for one user on one specific page. So this is the thing that we do 4 to 6 million times per second. The other part is selecting what are the products or what are the messages we want to show the user. This is the part that contains the most personalized information and decision, because based on this information, we decide whether we want to show you a pair of shoes, a pair of pants, an iPhone, or whatever product is interesting to you and is relevant to you. And then there is the optimization of the look and feel. To give you an idea, if I believe that those orange shoes are the one product that you really want to buy, I will show them I will use the whole banner to show that one product. If I'm maybe less sure, or maybe you're less sure because you're more in a browsing mood, you will perhaps enjoy the blue shoes or the green shoes or the red one. So I will show all those products to you, and I will use the pixels in a slightly different way.
It's really fascinating how AI just drives marketing and advertising. So the next question here is, how has AI driven your business specifically, and how long did it take to implement?
We've been built on AI, actually. The company was founded on a recommendation algorithm. And in 2008 is the moment when somebody came and said, well, you know what, that recommendation algorithm, you should use it to show advertising on the internet. And this is the moment where we started. So it took about 3 years to pivot from having the algorithm to finding the right product. Then in 2012 was the beginning of programmatic ad buying. So we had to develop what we call the predictive bidding aspect. So to decide very precisely how we needed to bid on those ads in order to generate the maximum value. Then in 2014, we started to develop at full scale the optimized look and feel of the banner, and in order to generate the banner that is most interesting for the user. And in 2016, we realized that a user usually has 3 to 4 devices by which they access the internet. They have their laptop, they have their phone, their tablet, maybe their desktop at home or at work. And so it made no sense to consider these as separate entities, because they related to the same person that had different, that had the same interests and not different interests. So we developed an AI-based way to match those devices that we think belong to a same person. So on a regular basis, we find some part of our product that is not yet AI powered, and we incorporate additional intelligence in our systems. At the same time, we change and we evolve in the target that we predict. Remember, pillar number 2 was the objective, and it is a business objective, but it is also a technical objective. So back in 2012, which was about when I joined the company, our system was very crude. We had only 5 variables, which were the publisher we were showing an ad for, the advertiser for whom we were showing the ad, and a couple of other data on the user and how they related to the advertiser. That was very simple, very crude, but still it allowed us to predict whether a user was going to click on a banner or not. And this was fairly groundbreaking in the industry. Then as technology evolved, we optimized on more variables and we were able to predict better clicks. In 2014, the engine was sophisticated enough that we could predict not only clicks, but also sales that happen after clicks. So once again, this time on the target that we were predicting, we evolved the system once again. So evolving on 2 axes, the components that were AI powered and the target that we were optimizing for, that went ever closer to the business needs of our clients. And that was for retargeting, which is a somewhat smaller part of that huge $200 billion market that I mentioned at the beginning. Now we are evolving also on a 3rd axis, which is the various types of product. We are climbing up on the conversion funnel, going for what we call consideration campaigns, which are users that might be interested in your website but have never actually went there. And awareness, which is a more broad advertising, in particular for brands, in order for them to be aware, for users to be aware of the brands, and also diversified the channels that we show our ads in. Originally, we're only on the web, and mostly a desktop web, and then moving on to mobile web apps. And recently, we are also able to recommend not only products that you can purchase online, but also product that you can purchase in a store that's not too far away from you. That's assuming you're not in lockdown and you cannot go out and shop, obviously.
It's fascinating how the ads that I see are tailored just for me, and now I'm starting to understand why. So the next question here is, what's the impact of the infrastructure behind this?
So infrastructure is an absolute key enabler for anything around AI. And if we think about what happens in 10 seconds, in about the time that has elapsed since I showed the slides, there has been so many events going on. And for us, we've shown 2 million ads in the time it took me to tell that sentence. But that's only the part that is exposed to the whole internet, which is a very big thing. But for us, interestingly enough, there is a lot of work that goes on backstage in order for us to be able to show those 2 million ads in 10 seconds. There is all the data preparation. We collect from our live servers, so the user-facing parts of our systems, about 400 terabytes of data every day that we centralize into 2 Hadoop clusters. And we have hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs that perform data crunching for analytics so that we know how campaigns behave. Processing additional data from coming from our customers so that we understand that this product is, for example, I don't know, let's say an iPhone category electronics, color black, and capacity 64 gigs. And of course, all the training of the AI systems that I mentioned earlier. Finding the patterns in the data that explain whether a user has clicked on a banner or not and has purchased something or not. So all this preparation goes on backstage on our Hadoop clusters. And the most amazing thing is that whenever we perform research or exploration of our data, we replay history and we see whether a new algorithm would have performed differently than the algorithm that actually run in production. And we do this at about 100 times the speed of reality in order for us to have hundreds, if not thousands, of experiments on a daily basis. So the use of our big Hadoop cluster is about 10 times for experiments what we use for production. And we have as I mentioned earlier, a global infrastructure. So this is actually the view from one of our data centers. It's the cold corridor, and there's the VP of infrastructure right in front of us. We have 6 data centers that we use for online processing of requests, 2 in the US, 2 in Europe, and 2 in APAC for redundancy purposes. We have 2 processing data centers both in Europe for all these data crunching and machine learning systems. A total of about 45K, might be even 50K now. Quite a number of those are coming from HPE with Intel processors. So thank you guys. And the key KPIs that we're looking for are processing power per watt, because at this scale, your power consumption is an issue. And also we want to, as much as possible, have green energy in our data centers, as well as storage capacity per square meter or square feet, if that's more what you are used to. And finally, since we operate our infrastructure, we've grown it from a few dozen servers to 50K. We have a very strong procurement process. If you've ever tried to sell us hardware or software, you will know that we will come with a list of requirements that's about this thick. And it has been built because every single one of those has been caused by an issue we've had in the past. So it's scars that we bear, problems that we faced, and now that we are extremely mature in this way, we're able to operate a fairly sizable infrastructure.
Fascinating, just really mind-blowing infrastructure you have there. So let's talk about the key learnings. What have you learned, and what's your advice for an AI roadmap?
So from what I've seen in 8 years operating AI at Criteo, the first thing is you want to start small. As I mentioned earlier, our model to predict clicks used 5 variables in 2011, and we actually did our IPO while our model had only 15 features. It was very simple. It's just that they were the right ones and they were working very well. Now, we've added over the years about 200 features or more. We are using deep learning to improve our recommendation engine, but in the end, you need data to learn your system, but you need a system to have this data. So you have a chicken and egg problem. So the key thing is you want to start simple. Your first hire should be a data analyst and a data engineer. Those people will make sure that the data keeps flowing. And then you want to use simple visualization tools, analytics tools, in order to spot the correlation, in order to make your data speak. And this is something you want to run on, I would say, a turnkey hardware solution, something that comes from your usual vendor, integrates well with your existing architecture, and that allows you to get this intuition of what works and what doesn't work. Then you want to ensure that what you predict is well aligned with your business. So as I mentioned, we started predicting clicks. Those are not exactly what a retailer wants to do. They want to sell things. They don't want only to have visitors. It's a good proxy, but it's ultimately they really want to increase their sales. But at the time, it was the best we could do. So this is what we focused on. And as the systems grew, as the data grew, as the power of our AI grew, we were able to bring these to a much closer, well aligned with the business objective of our clients. So in this sense, you will need a product manager, somebody that can speak tech with the tech and business with the clients in order to find what's the right compromise, what it is that we can predict and what it is that we can sell to a client that brings value to them. And the other thing is AI is really an experimental science. Whenever you have an intuition, you need to check it. It's something that we've seen time and again. Lots of very good ideas have proven to actually not work because lots of reasons. So the only way you can actually operate an AI in the real world is to do lots of experiments to find out what works. And you need to be able to do this very quickly, very easily. You need to have a solid infrastructure that empowers you to play with the data, to approach it from various angles, test lots of models, and then to release them and test it in the real world and to roll back if something bad happens. We've all heard stories about huge internet companies that at some point have an issue, and then sometimes even people call the police because they cannot talk to their friends on their favorite a messaging system. So whenever you have a system that goes in production, you have to monitor it. You have to have systems that detect whenever it's working or not working. It goes on for, I mean, it can be for internet advertising, but of course that may not be considered a mission critical or life critical system. But if you're closer to something that is mission critical, you really need to ensure that everything is well monitored, that you have a backup solution and a big red button that says stop or roll back. So the things that we've learned in this 8-year journey through the use of AI at a scale of the internet and operated for the purpose of being relevant for our users and bringing value to our clients is, first of all, you need data. The data is king. You need to have lots of it. You need to ensure that it's high quality. You need your data engineers to make sure that this pipeline of information is maintained, is correct, and is solid. You need to have the right objective, something that both you can predict with good accuracy and something that brings value to your customers. You need to have this solid infrastructure in which you can experiment things, in which you can test things, and you need to have it monitored on a hourly basis, all the time, basically. We have AIs that monitor other AIs so that we know when something bad happens. And then in the end, something I did not mention, you work on the science, you work on the models, you wonder whether deep learning or shallow learning or anything. It is something you build after you have all these three, because when you have all these three, you do have a business that is built on AI. And if I can give you the, my cheat sheet, or recommended cheat sheet for hiring people, you start with your data engineers, with your data analysts. Then you you can do heuristics at this point. Your product manager, defining the roadmap. Your software engineers, release engineers, DevOps, they operate the system as it goes live. And then your data scientists and researchers, they're the one that will actually inject layer after layer after layer of AI and of intelligence. And finally, one last word, something I care deeply about, is all the work and all the research and all the discussions going around ethics, biases, discriminations. If you're not careful, you can have your AI reinforce those biases, those discriminations that we see in our common world, and it can even reinforce them a lot. And since it's a machine, it will do so very stupidly. As well, obviously, there's lots of things going on around the privacy world, around the accountability. So make sure that your legal department is aware of all this and that you're working very closely with them to understand what it is that you can do, what it is that you cannot do, what it is that you should do, and how you can go about to deploying an AI system that actually works for the whole of your user base. I won't say the whole of mankind because, or humankind, that would be a bit too grandiose, but that's the point. Remember, machines are very stupid, and you need to be careful with how to let them work on their own. So thank you, thanks a lot, and you can follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and appreciate the questions and the feedback.
Excellent, fabulous advice. Thank you so much. So much wisdom that you've shared here with us today. And with that, let's go to some key takeaways for today's session.
Yeah, so thank you, Romain, for your fantastic presentation. It was really eye-opening to see a business essentially build on the power of AI, something that wouldn't necessarily be possible some, maybe 20 years ago. So that was fantastic. I also will have some questions for you on how to better personalize ads, I see, but we can take that offline. So some of the key takeaways for me were that that AI, in order to be successful, it's not an end-all standalone solution. It is a tool. It's a tool to make your product better, faster, more efficient, and that's really what I would love to see enterprises look at. You can also think outside the box. AI enables outcomes that were not possible just a couple of short years ago, and that was the perfect example with Criteo. But AI must drive a business case. If you're doing a POC, if you're just experimenting with AI, that's great. But in order to actually get that into production and get to scale deployment, it has to drive your business case, and that's essential to consider as you're starting out. And then finally, and I know Romain had said it several times, the importance of data, the importance of having massive amounts of data. And you saw in the Criteo example how many years of data they had collected. And we work with several customers that come with insufficient data and expect that to be analyzable. And the reality is, again, like Romain said, machines are stupid. You have to train them. Think about, your 5-year-old kid. You have to continuously feed them information and feed them data in order to be able to make these decisions that we essentially rely on as an advisor to drive these better outcomes. They need massive amounts of data, and that data needs to be clean and it needs to be labeled. So there's a lot there, and so when you look at how long an AI deployment will take, a lot of that has to do with data. And finally, I really appreciate the hiring guidelines. I think staffing is such an issue for companies looking to explore AI today, that it's very important to understand and sort of have a roadmap for where to start. So thank you for that, Romain. I really, really appreciated it, and noted down some of the guidelines as well.
Excellent takeaways, Monica. Manoj, what are your key takeaways?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, I wanted to thank both Romain and Monica for joining us on the webcast. It has certainly been a pleasure to learn more about, Criteo and kind of how you're using AI in your business. I think there are 3 key things that I would like to point out. Number one is I would certainly build on what Monica said, right, which is data is absolutely critical. And when we talk about data, again, think about as an organization, you have data in multiple different silos, right? You may have it in supply chain and sales and marketing and HR. A lot of those data points, are traditionally siloed, and you need to bring them together depending on the objective that you're driving towards. So breaking open, those silos, tearing down those walls and bringing that data together within an organization is something that a lot of users may have not been used to before. And that is certainly something, culturally as a company that you need to look into. Because think of it, you hire these expensive resources, the last thing you want them to do is to spend time just disseminating the data, trying to build a model, right? And so that's number one. Number two is around the infrastructure. Romain touched upon this earlier, which is you need to have a hybrid approach, and you need to integrate it with what you currently have. The IT department in most organizations is well equipped with a lot of these technologies, right? When you're talking about hundreds of terabytes of data that you're pulling together, you obviously need systems that can scale, that can perform. again, process all of this data, in the fastest possible way. And so leverage, your existing data center environment, look for technologies that can help you scale over a period of time, and integrate, both an on-premise, cloud, whatever environment you want to do, integrate it and work with your partners, right? Both HP and Intel will certainly support you on that. And the third area is start early, right? Start small, but start early. I mean, look at what Criteo did, right? It took them almost 8 years to perfect the model and to where they are today. And they continue to be one of the leading advertisers in the world. And yes, the world of advertising in general probably may change because of everything going on. But guess what? They have access to all of that data online. And the fact that because of all the challenging environment, there will be more businesses going online. And so e-commerce is going to be becoming all the more critical. And this is where the technologies they invested in the past 8 years is really going to help them accelerate. And so as a business, if you're just starting out in this journey, if you're just exploring, probably looking at 1 or 2 use cases, don't wait for everything to come together all at once. You have to start somewhere, and you have to start early. And there again, both HP and Intel can help you based on, not only our current experience with customers and best practices, but we can also help you get started with smaller footprints, smaller environments, to engage in your journey. So thanks again for the opportunity, but those would be the 3 key takeaways from my side.
Fantastic advice on AI from the front lines. Thank you to our expert presenters, Monica, Manoj, and Romain. And now we'll take some questions from our audience. All right. Excellent presentation. Thank you, everyone. Now it's time for some Q&A. I want to make sure all my presenters are here. Manoj, Monica, Roman, are you with me?
Yep.
Yes, hi.
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so let's see. First question that came in from the audience, and I guess we'll start with you, Manoj, on this is, given the current economic challenges and potential impact to IT budgets, is it advisable for companies to invest in AI projects right now? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, absolutely. I think every business is having that challenge right now in terms of where they spend their capital, and IT budgets, of course, are certainly going to be under scrutiny around the world. But I think the way I look at AI, or at least I'm sure customers will be looking at AI, is not as an IT project, but more as a business transformation project. There are indications from some of the lead research houses, lately that talk about how, IT budgets may shrink, but there might be more investments going into innovative technologies like AI, like, insights and analytics. And the reason for that is because, it's becoming all the more critical for businesses to start understanding, their different linkages between their customers, the different use cases, and how to capitalize on the data that they currently have, or more data that'll be coming. There will be more automation going around, in a variety of different industries, and that will then lead to more data, which will then, require more insight. So I think from that perspective, while the overall IT environment may shrink or may slow down, I think companies that have a business transformation objective or a digital transformation objective will be aggressively moving towards rapidly adopting AI.
Okay, excellent insight. Monica, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with Manoj as well. But I think whether or not to invest in AI continues to be dependent on the business problem that you're trying to solve and the data that you have available. And so in this current environment, we're seeing an acceleration in AI projects in areas like vaccine research, surveillance, especially when these systems are starting to maybe add things like temperature detection or social distancing type features. We're seeing an acceleration in telemedicine, remote learning with the customized curriculums for students. Cybersecurity is ramping up as well. And these are just a couple. Oh, and I shouldn't forget my favorite, which is online gaming. I know my children spend at least twice as much on gaming now than they did before, and so we're definitely seeing our gaming customers trying to double down on some projects and increase their presence. And so in these areas, we're seeing growth because of COVID. But then, of course, there are other areas like manufacturing, non-grocery retail, hospitality, just to name a few. And I can definitely see AI projects pausing as these businesses are struggling on how to deal with COVID and dealing with closed factories or a loss in business. And so obviously in those places, AI is not going to be prevalent in the next couple of months as they're dealing with the very significant impacts of COVID.
Yeah, great point. I mean, there's a lot more to AI than just what people might traditionally think of when it comes to an AI project. AI can be used in every single industry out there. So I think that's really eye-opening. Second question here, do HPE or Intel have any starter kits or offers or recommended configurations for running AI POCs or pilots? Manoj?
Yeah, we continue to update, platforms and solutions. Most of our solution offerings are available on hpe.com/AI. But we certainly work with customers depending on where they are in their journey, whether they're in the early phases or are doing some POCs or even in advanced production environments. And again, we can prescribe those configurations based on the use cases. And we can certainly work with those customers. In addition to that, we also have an advisory workshop that our Pointnext services team does, where we will come in and help you with establishing a blueprint for your future, AI roadmap, as well as making, the right recommendations from an architecture perspective. And Intel and us, we collaborate on several of these engagements.
Excellent. And Monica, any recommendations for getting started with a AI POC?
Yeah, and it just really depends at what stage you are in your AI journey. And I think for quick start or experimentation, Intel and others offer pre-trained models. So we have tools like Analytics Zoo and Model Zoo that already have software and pre-trained models in there. These are open source, they're free to use, and they work on your existing platforms. This, again, is just for a quick start. And then we have a number of ISV partners in our AI Builders program who have optimized solutions, and HPE, of course, is one of them. And I would recommend that in enterprise companies really look at what specific functions they're trying to drive and what they hope to get out of AI. What I want to stress is that AI is not in a box that you can buy and put in the corner, and then therefore you have an AI solution. The choice of software and the choice of algorithm and model is significant here as well. So you really have to think through what problem you're trying to solve, and then look at what infrastructure you have available and what potentially you need to expand on. But for a really quick start, I would look at the open source pre-trained models that are already out there. And if you're looking to do things like object recognition or NLP or chat box, conversational AI, there's a lot of really good solutions out there that you can try out. Now, of course, you're going to have to optimize that and customize it for you if you're going to take it into production. But again, for really just a quick try of what's available, the AI community is incredibly open, and so everything is available open source, which is, I think, fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are some great resources and tips there that a lot of people might not know about or think about when it comes to getting started with AI. Next question I wanted to ask Roman here, what's a realistic time frame from an AI project from start to finish?
Oh, that's a good one. I guess first it depends on where you start from and what you call success. I think it was Manoj that stressed the fact that sometimes all your data is stored in different silos. And the first thing you need to do is actually to collect it all in one place so that your data scientists can start to work. And depending on how integrated your infrastructure is, it can take a few minutes or it can take a few months. After this, well, there is I would say, the actual data science work in which you tune the model, you go back to your data store to add more data, you analyze the results and everything, and this can take between 3 and 6 months. And as Monica just said, the first thing you want to do is to start with something simple, maybe if you have a pre-trained model because somebody else has already solved a similar problem and put all the information available as open source so that you can download. It's a great way to start. And after this, you can fine tune for your needs. And the third part is going to be deployment. How exactly, what are you going to do with that AI? If you wanted to analyze, I don't know, some pieces of data for your business on, let's say, once a week, that's fine. It's not a huge deployment. If, like us, you have it live on internet servers, there's a bit more work to do in order to make it scale and to monitor it. And of course, if you want to put it on embedded systems that are mission critical or even life critical, then there is, once again, a huge amount of work to do. So based on our experience, I would say whenever we start a new project around AI, we know that we already have quite a lot of the data. Our deployment processes are usually there. So I would say between 3 months and 1 year, to depending on the complexity of the problem and depending on how hard it was and how whether our initial proof of concept was already pretty successful. So I would say, yeah,
Okay.
3 months to 1 year.
Okay, good advice. And then another question for you, Roman, as well. Can you share any examples of where AI cases have failed or have not been successful?
Oh, how many days do you have? Yeah, plenty. So that's the reason why testing is so important and experimentation is so important, is that your first proof of concept usually doesn't work and you have to go back to the drawing board and so on. I'm not sure that's what you would consider a project failing. However, we've seen cases where the technology worked, but it did not correspond to what the market needed, market fit issue, or the needs of the market actually could not be met with the existing technology. So I think the most important case where the most important source of failure for an AI project is actually the same reason why the product that you're building actually doesn't sell. It's a question of market fit. Does your technology fit the needs of the market? And that's the reason why you want to build something simple quickly. It's so that you can gauge the waters. You can try to see whether there's a chance of having a good fit, or actually if you should fail as fast as possible and stop and do something else. There's also another additional reason why your AI project or product can fail, is when everything works, everything is doing exactly as it should, except it's not exactly what you should be doing. To give you an example, there was one tech company that wanted to improve their hiring system, hiring velocity. So they trained a system, an AI, to recognize what were the good CVs for promising engineers to hire, and reject the other ones, so that the hiring department could be more effective. And the issue was that the population they trained on was their own engineers, which were mostly white, male, coming from the same engineering schools and universities. And they rejected every CV, every resume that had the word woman in it. And that's clearly not what you want to have when you're a diversity-friendly company. So in this case, the system worked, except that they did not realize that there were consequences for deploying that AI. So lots of reasons why your system won't work. And usually they're not technical. They're really more around business and around the fact that machines are incredibly stupid. And you really have to tell them exactly what you want. And you have to make sure that what you want is actually what you want.
Great advice. I like that. Manoj, do you want to talk about what not to do when it comes to an AI project?
Yeah, I think apart from the pointers that I called out earlier, right? I think one of the biggest challenges that we've seen, and there was some industry data points recently that talked about 85% of the projects that typically companies get into don't see the light of the day into production, right? And to Ramon's point, right? You want to fail fast and move on, because it's a matter of continuous iteration, not only from the data that you get, but also the models that you build and the probability iterations that you come out with it. I think things not to do is certainly not to take on too much, right, from a scope perspective, because there's always this this perception that AI can be the one-all be-all answer to every business problem. It is not, right? You have to be very strategic and very objectively identify what are the key drivers for the business, and whether AI can solve that, or is it just a matter of analytics. So distinguishing that early is important. Also, making sure that you're not driving these decisions in isolation, right? Every line of business has different requirements. IT departments have their own requirements, and so there's a lot of collaboration that needs to happen, between business and the IT department to make sure that, to Ramon's point, it's not just the technology, but it's the cultural aspects of the data, the sharing of information, and then also the potential result or the outcomes, right, that'll come out of the AI project. Are you culturally organized to go execute on the recommendations, right? Because machines at the end of the day are stupid. It's depending on how you program the model and what is that likely output or outcome that will help define your business requirements. So I think clearly keeping in mind some of these parameters and attributes, and going into a project with an open mind of, hey, here's the scope, here's the objective, here's the timeline, and you just continue to iterate it over a period of time.
Okay, excellent. Great advice. I like that. We all need to learn what not to do, I think, to avoid those pitfalls. Here's another question that just came in. Deborah's asking, at what point will model management tools provide value? Who wants to take that one?
Maybe I can. I think that as soon as you have a second version of your model, it's incredibly important that you have a proper management system. So to give everyone an idea, every day when you have your data scientists that work on improving the model or testing new configurations, they create new variants of the system, and they will test them, and they will try to deploy them, A/B test them in the wild. And the key question is, how do you keep track of all these experiments? How do you ensure that if for some reason the model starts to misbehave, that you have a big red button that says fall back to the previous known system? And if there are any people working in software engineering listening on the call, it's pretty much the same reason why you use source code versioning systems. It's to make sure that you have a good traceability of the development process and an ability to roll back. So I would say pretty much almost right from the start, you want to make sure that you have all your experiments squared away and your ability to fall back.
Excellent. Well, next question I wanted to ask is to Monica. Monica, any advice on what not to do when it comes to getting started with AI?
Oh, wow. So I think both Roma and Manoj pretty much talked through that one. I think the one thing that I would maybe add is don't overestimate your staff, especially if they're not data scientists. You do need AI expertise if you're going to drive a solution from the ground up. It's not as simple to implement in-house. So you need to make sure that you've staffed your data scientists, and especially if you're a larger company and you have pockets of data scientists, I think it's extremely important to get your data strategy correct to start out with and make sure that they're not working in silos. And then the other thing I would say is make sure that you have executive support. And this is true, of course, with any project, not just AI projects. But AI projects will touch so many different areas, from a legal and privacy concern. You need to have some level of explainability as well. And so make sure that you've connected with those stakeholders so that they're not surprised when you're trying to deploy a project and then they come in with a list of issues that they see. So you've got to engage these folks early. So I think that's what I would add. I think Roma and Manoj definitely covered this in great detail.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Yeah, I think you make a great point about the staffing. It takes time to learn how to, implement AI at your company, and it's not something to be underestimated. So that's a great point. It looks like we're running out of time in our session today. This has been really enlightening. Manoj, I wanted to give you the final question here, and that is, what should people do to get started, to learn more about AI from HPE and Intel?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I think first and foremost, most welcome to go check out our website, hpe.com/AI. You can also do the same on the Intel side. We have several course materials in terms of things that other customers have already learned. There are some white papers. In fact, on this webinar, there are 2 handouts specifically that we have pulled. One that is focused on kind of industry best practices, and the other one talks about the workshop that I was alluding to. Check those out. Check out the websites. There's also a distribution email that you're welcome to reach out for further inquiries, and we would be happy to support and provide additional expertise.
Excellent. Excellent. I want to remind the audience that the links that you see there on the slide are clickable. The email address, ai_madeeasy@hpe.com. If you just mouse over, you can click on that link and it will actually open up an email on your local computer that you can send for more information. And the link below that, hpe.com/AI, is also clickable. So make sure you check that out. Also, there are a number of handouts, as Manoj mentioned, in the audience console there, on exploring the AI journey and the HPE AI transformation workshop brief. And then finally, the third one down is our first session in this webinar series, AI from the front lines. That'll take you to the recording of that event if you weren't able to see that initial webinar in this series. Finally, I want to thank our presenters, Roman, Monica, and Manoj. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone out there in the audience for joining today's webinar. For more information, visit hpe.com/AI. And finally, I want to make an announcement on our $300 Amazon gift card winner. That is going to Jamie Jeffries from Maryland. Congratulations. We'll reach out to you to deliver that gift card. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.